Greg and Julie Gorman are back with us today. They are authors of Two Are Better Than One. They're the founders of Gorman Leadership, and they have a tremendous passion for empowering others to discover God's purpose and fingerprint design for their lives and their marriages. Good to have you back with us today.
Great to be back.
Let's kind of get right to the topic at hand. Two are better than one, coming from the book of Ecclesiastes.
Right.
What is it that kind of triggered or kind of birthed this message in your life?
Well, I have to tell you, first of all, that when we felt that God was calling us to write a book on purpose and marriage, we were kind of like, come on, God, really? Hasn't that been done?
Right. Yeah, you can find shelves after shelves after shelves.
Right. There's a lot of them out there. But he really inspired us to write something that truly is fresh and different, in that the focus is less about a to-do list of things that we need to make sure that we're doing all the time, to really making the focus more of a celebration of who we are naturally, and how our differences and our likenesses and such complement one another. And so it's a more a positive, uplifting sort of message.
Yeah, what we discovered too, you know, it's been almost 2 decades that we've been working with couples, and what we found is the common thing that would cause couples to be united, to be one in marriage, was that if they had a common purpose. And we see this a lot with empty nesters, for example, where a couple has made their entire life about their child. The child leaves and they look at one another and they think, we have nothing in common anymore. Now what? And after 20 or 30 years of being married, they throw in the towel. And so what we're inviting couples to do is to keep a common purpose, keep that theme that God has, that fingerprint design, right? And our purpose is as unique as God is creative.
Right.
And we invite couples to discover what that is.
Okay, so Julie, then when you're discovering what God's purpose is for your marriage, shouldn't two people come to the marriage kind of understanding His purpose for them as individuals as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, and statistically, it's been quoted that 92 to 98% of evangelical believers don't know their God-given purpose. And so we try to take the scariness away from discovering the purpose to just inviting and beginning to ask God, hey, what do you have in mind here? And as we start the book, you know, the thing that every couple, no matter what the final aha moment is, right? Whether they ever discovered that or not, there are 3 things that any couple can make as their central purpose as a starting point. And that is to make God known, to bring God pleasure, and to demonstrate His unconditional love. And with those overarching principles, then they're in a place that they can begin to invite the specifics of what that might be.
And if we just start with that, if we as couples just woke up every day with those 3 things in mind, it'll transform our marriage in a much, much positive way, really will.
Okay, so let's talk in practical terms. How do you walk that out every day?
With the make God known, bring Him pleasure,
Yes.
demonstrate unconditional love. I think for me, the way that operates is every morning before I put my feet to the floor, I simply ask God, how can I bring value to my husband today? How can I make him feel cherished? And how can I bring value and honor to my kids? And so that's a practical starting point.
Yeah, I think for me, it's similar. My daughter always gets on to me for saying similar.
Yeah, he says
similar.
simular.
Yeah, I caught that.
instead of similar.
We'll let that slide, though.
It's very similar. It's really about being in a mindset of serving rather than being served. And then I think beyond that, it goes back to something we talk about a lot, and that's really learning how to communicate with one another. You hear so many couples talking about love, and that they're trying to make sure that the other person hears that they love them, and it's not translating. And of course, that was a great book years ago. And today, for us, communication is, again, more about not establishing our rights, but more about us understanding each other.
Yeah. You know, and the book really does bring a lot of practical we have a common interest survey,
Right.
establishing core values, those things that if we don't honor them, will deplete us. We talk about replenishment physically, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. So there's a lot of simple 1-2 steps that can be simplified in our relationship, talking points that we can have as a couple, again, that invites the power and the presence of God in our relationship.
Makes it fun.
One of the things is you're really not attacking this or tackling this, but approaching it from almost a different level from the how-tos and the disciplines, like you said, and dealing more with the desires and the purpose and the passion.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned earlier, a lot of people are, when you talk about what's God's purpose for your life, it's like, how am I supposed to answer that? How? And even the founder of this ministry, Dr. Lester Sumrall, had this to say. He said, after 50 years of worldwide evangelism, God finally put me on target while I was in Jerusalem. And you think, after 50 years of changing the world, all of a sudden, the light bulb goes on.
Yeah.
Not to discount that what happens before that isn't right in the heart of God, but he was always about following your passion and following God's passion. I think that's one of the topics you both deal with in detail here in Two Are Better Than One is what fuels your desires, what drives your passion. So talk a little bit about that for just a moment, and how we have the signals or the signs within us to help us point to that place of purpose.
Yeah, I remember when my daughter came to me. Summer was probably about 6 or 7 years old. And I had been in the process of stepping out of corporate America and fulfilling the work of an evangelist. And there was a lot of soul searching and God, what's next on there. And all of a sudden, my to-do list got really long. And I started looking at that list, and I'd been trained, okay, put the pros here, the cons here. And what I found is there was a whole bunch of pros and no cons to help me, to
prioritize
narrow that list. And it's like, God, what do you want from me? And I was soul searching and trying to hear God's voice, and I heard nothing until my 6-year-old came in and she said, Mommy, which do you want me to do? You want me to be a cheerleader, or you want me to go into dance? And my instant response was, oh, baby doll, whatever will bring you the most joy. And just that quick, the Holy Spirit, if it could be replicated, oh, baby doll, I just want you to do what brings you joy. And so often we try to complicate, or I complicate it at least, and we find others complicate, trying to make God's will this big mysterious thing, when maybe it's just simply living those joys and living those designs that are already within us, as long as they're under that umbrella of God, of course.
Of course, yeah.
Julie, the more you talk, the more I realize a couple has to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I mean, that's, how can you even know his purpose? And I've had friends who are not born again who have told me, I live a very happy life. I'm fulfilled, and I don't know Jesus Christ. So how can you make that argument? But really, we don't even know what his will is if we don't know him. So talk about, to those couples, who are probably not in the faith, who are kind of on the fence, how important it is to develop that relationship with him.
From little on up, Jesus has always been my center post. Being brought up in a really abusive environment set me up for failure. And what I discovered is that God is extremely personal. And people today say, do you think God really causes, and is he really still speaking? And I look all throughout the Bible, and we see where God confirmed, for Mary when she was pregnant, and the baby leapt in her womb, right? We see where he made a fleece wet, and then he made it dry, and then there's so many ways that God interacts. And so for that person that's struggling and wondering, how important is Jesus, I would just dare them to invite that if he's real. Sometimes we're not at that point of God, be Lord of my life. But maybe we're at that point where we could say, Lord, I'm willing to be willing, and inviting him to show up and show off in our life.
And Greg, just looking for your input and perspective as well when it comes to passions and purpose and being as the head of the household. What does that look like for you?
Well, again, as Julie iterated, I think that when we begin to search for our purpose, we look for how God naturally knit us together. We could hold up an ink pen right now and ask the listeners and the viewers, you know, what's the purpose of this ink pen? And almost everybody would know exactly what the purpose of an ink pen is. Yet it's so difficult sometimes, and it becomes, again, a big mystery to us. So for me, I struggled with this for a while. I really did. And when we got in the profession of speaking, motivational speaking and writing and things of that nature, one of the questions that was really key for me to help me discover my personal purpose was, what does the fruit in your life come from? So I think that's another great question for people to examine is where's the fruit in your life come from up to this point? Because I had this idea, you know, I wanted to sing. I thought that, you know, I was supposed to sing.
And he's really good.
She's my wife.
Not one of those folks that think they can sing, but you can actually sing.
He's good, yeah.
And, you know, the doors just were not opening. And as I examined, I was really at a time period in my life where I was struggling with that. I was like, Lord, you know, if this is what you want me to do and you've given me this talent for a purpose, then there's got to be a door open someplace. And it just wasn't happening. And so what caused me to be able to move past that peacefully was asking, you know, what is it? Where has the most of the fruit in my life come from? And as I looked at that, I was able to say, wow, it's been in leading people. It's been in inspiring others, right, to become all that God created them to be. And that led us right into working together.
That's what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Good to have you back on the Harvest Show. Greg and Julie Gorman, authors of Two Are Better Than One. God has a purpose for your marriage. To connect with Greg and Julie, you can go to gormanleadership.com, or as always, go to our website, harvest-tv.com. Find an easy way to link back to their site as well. We'll be right back in just a moment.